Hello.
This video is brought to you by a patron who requested it for the month of June. Welcome back to the Space School, otherwise known as PPSW, your favorite hangout place. Today we're back with another Star Wars story. Today we're going to see what would have happened had the ancient Jedi Master Tera Sinube trained the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. Much like Plo Koon and Master Yoda, Tera Sinube was a Master Jedi whose age ranged into centuries of life. Would he be the answer for young Skywalker, or would he lead Anakin into darkness? Before we begin this video, let's smash the like button. We're going to shoot for 2,000 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will release What If Vader Reached His Full Potential. This is a video you definitely don't want to miss. We're also getting for 50,000 subscribers, so join the Space School if you want to be a part of our incredible journey together. If you have ideas for videos, leave them down below. I do read all your comments, but I don't do crossovers. And one last thing, if you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon, Twitch, and community Discord. Special shout out to George Story and Ruben Rojas for being grand tier supporters, and Jay Hoffman, Icy Raptor, Gort, and Warpigman308 as master of the tier supporters on our Patreon. Thank you all for supporting the channel so much. You are funding a massive project coming out in late July or early August, and if you want to learn how to win a free lightsaber, watch to the end of the video and I will tell you how. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple. The events of the Phantom Menace have played out as per normal, and while the galaxy has been forever changed, the former council member, Tera Sinube, was sitting in the Jedi archives. He was sleeping in his chair while he was doing something or another, I didn't really know. He probably wouldn't even remember if he refreshed the page on the tablet he was using. The Jedi archivist Jocasta walked by and looked at the sleeping Jedi Master. She smiled and shook her head as she continued moving away from the area. Tera was jarred from his sleep when a convoy of younglings marched their way through the archives. Tera looked over and squinted his eyes to see what the ruckus was all about. He smiled when he saw Master Yoda leading the brigade of younglings to one of the training halls on the other side of the archives. Yoda looked over and saw that one of his old friends was looking at him and smiled as he told his class to wave at Master Sinube. Tera waved back as the class all waved at him. Tera, though, saw a young boy who was walking with the class who didn't over-eagerly wave. There was something off. Tera felt this through the Force. He didn't press the matter in the moment as he turned around in his seat. Tera continued doing what it was that he was doing, which he himself didn't really even know what it was. Tera was 200 years or older. He shook his head because he couldn't really remember either. He got up and started walking around, looking around for something else to do, smiling and waving at Jedi as he walked by. He was going to go to his favorite place in the Jedi Temple. Everyone knew Master Sinube, and they all adored him. He was a lovable old man, and he was always a great help to whoever needed that help around him. Master Sinube served on the High Council before he stepped down from his position to become a Jedi investigator. Tera knew the ins and outs of the Coruscant underworld. He knew the crime rings, the best and worst spots, and he knew the worst of the worst people that could be found in the underbelly. His patience and knowledge made him a formidable agent in comparison to the Coruscant police force. Master Sinube continued steadily walking through the massive temple halls, chatting with Jedi Knights, Masters, Padawans, and even younglings, all of which who knew him. Master Sinube was a teacher to many, and while he hadn't had an apprentice in at least 30 years, he was a master to all. He was adored by everybody in the Jedi Temple. Tera walked up to the garden at the top of the Jedi Temple, hidden by grand walls, as he sat down in front of a tree, laying his cane down next to him. Master Sinube's cane was really cool to him. He hid his lightsaber within it, so that no one would see him as a threat, which honestly, what kind of threat could an old Tera be seen as? Tera looked out at the tree within the garden as he closed his eyes. Sure, he had his big nap not long before, but he was meditating this time. Definitely not napping. Tera lasted 5 minutes before he fell back asleep. Master Sinube figured out how to fall asleep in a meditative stance so that no one would question him or try to awake him. Master Sinube was an elder, but he wasn't dead nor dying. He just enjoyed the peacefulness of life. The tree in the garden was a place of happiness for Tera. The temple was mostly barren from natural life, and Coruscant itself had absolutely no natural life other than the populace that lived there. Tera Sinube was now in a deep sleep. He was transcending the Force, and he was in a deep state of thought within his mind. The Force led him through tunnels into visions, and then he heard screams. Tera focused harder as the screams amplified. It was followed by a blaster fire and the sound of lightsabers. From Tera Sinube's eyes, he saw shadows bouncing off the walls as he turned around and stuffed younglings into ventilation shafts. The time kept spinning as Tera found himself cornered by a massive suit. It had a red lightsaber and it stared at him as it lifted its hand, choking the Jedi Master as he jolted up from his sleep. Master Sunube looked into the eyes of an old friend of his. Master Yoda approached Master Sunube and sat down next to him, as the two friends gazed off at the Tree of Life, sitting in the middle of the courtyard. Yoda told Tera that the Chosen One was now inside of the Jedi Temple. Tera looked over. He sighed. He knew that there was something off, or something special about that boy. Yoda looked over at his friend, expressing that there was so much that he needed to learn, to be done. He wasn't ready for the Jedi training. He was so unprepared, and he was so extremely out of balance. Tera told Yoda that the boy would need special training, assuming that one of the council members took the child under their care. Yoda awkwardly looked away from his friend as he looked at the tree that was sitting in front of them. The old Master Sunube asked if there was a council member teaching the Chosen One. Yoda shook his head. Sunube then asked who. Yoda said that it was the apprentice to Qui-Gon Jinn. While Sunube was well intact with the Force, he was unaware of the events that had just happened in the previous few days. Sunube asked why Qui-Gon wasn't training the boy when he saw Yoda's face full of pain. Tera nodded his head, and then asked why the council hadn't elected to train the child themselves. Yoda didn't say a word, and then Tera figured it out. The council was going to tell the kid he couldn't join the ranks of the Jedi Order because of his age. Sunube scoffed as he stood up, holding a cane below his chin. He said respectfully to his old friend that the choices that the council made could greatly impact this child's development, telling Yoda that they already showed him they didn't want him, and he also asked how did Qui-Gon die. Yoda said that a Sith assassin killed him on Naboo. Tera turned around, expressing that the council was jeopardizing everything they knew and loved because of the code. Master Sunube stabbed his cane into the ground and told Master Yoda that the council made a grave mistake by pushing the child away. If the boy was to become the Chosen One, he could do whatever he wanted, and the Jedi couldn't do anything to stop him. It was unlikely that even the best in the Order, such as Yoda or Plo, would be able to stand up against the might of someone with a higher midichlorian count than anyone average of Yoda's species. Yoda looked at Tera, as Sunube told Master Yoda that ignoring the Chosen One could deviate him from the Order itself. Don't give the boy special treatment, but also don't alienate him with the children who will pick on him for being an outsider. Yoda looked at Sunube and listened, as he expressed, and turning around and saying the words that I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. Master Sunube continued speaking the words as he felt the Force flow throughout him from the Tree of Life. Tera knew what he needed to do. His dream wasn't a dream, it was a vision of the future that Yoda and the Council had established. The wind blew through Tera's silky white hair as he turned around and looked at Master Yoda. He asked where Kenobi was. Yoda said that Kenobi had been quiet ever since the death of his master. It was possible that he was inside of his own room, meditating. Sunube said that he would like to confront Kenobi and talk to him. Yoda nodded as Tera told him that he would teach the boy because the boy needed someone to trust. The Council clearly wasn't that, and now the Chosen One needed to find trust inside the Jedi Order, or else he would turn against it with the drop of a hat. Master Yoda told Master Sunube to have the Force be with him. Tera turned and said no, may the Force be with the Order. Tera began to walk away. While he had great respect for Master Yoda and the Council that he used to serve on, he knew that they made a tragic misstep. If the Chosen One was to grow into an ally of the Jedi, he needed to be trained by a Jedi Master, not a Padawan recently turned into a knight. Kenobi was a genuine soul, but he wasn't the best choice for a master. The teacher should have been anyone from Plo Koon to Ivan Pale, or Master Yoda himself, or even Eth Koth would have been a better example. Master Dooku would have made a fine teacher as well, and so would Yaddle. Tera shook his head as he continued sauntering his way to Obi-Wan's room, and he knocked on the door. Obi-Wan opened the door. He was no longer with his Padawan braid in his hair. He was just a knight. His hair was stiff as it stuck to his head. He looked down at Master Sunube and bowed, asking what it was that he wanted to talk to him about. Master Sunube wanted to know about the Chosen One. The second the question came out of Sunube's mouth, there was tension within Obi-Wan. Tera could feel that there was something off. There was something that bothered Obi-Wan about this boy. But Obi-Wan continued as if it was really nothing. He explained that Anakin Skywalker was born on Tatooine as a slave. He was born of the Force and his mother, and was found by Master Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan gritted his teeth as he continued telling Master Sunube that it seemed like Qui-Gon was ready to replace him with this boy named Skywalker. Tera figured it out, where the tension was coming from. It was the fact that Obi-Wan felt as if he was being replaced by his master, when Qui-Gon had never fully finished training him. and of course Obi-Wan felt the guilt of watching his master die without being able to help or save him from the Sith assassin named Maul. Tera understood. It wasn't just Anakin who needed guidance, but it was also Kenobi. Sunube told Obi-Wan to pack his things. Obi-Wan asked where his master was taking him to, and Sunube basically said, an expedition. Obi-Wan was puzzled, but Sunube was dedicated. He was focused, and he was going to ensure that what he did was for the best of the Order itself. Tera Sinube then traveled his way around to a massive elevator shaft. He took the elevator up into the council chambers. When he entered the council, they all looked at him. Master Sunube told the Jedi that he would be taking Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi with him on an expedition. Obi-Wan expressed that he promised Qui-Gon to train Anakin, and so Tera would make sure that came to life. All the council members leaned back in their seats as they looked at Tera with a confused expression across their faces. Tera told the council that Anakin needed to trust the Jedi, and Obi-Wan needed his faith to be restored. Pairing them up wasn't a mistake. It was allowing them to struggle together that was the mistake. Obi-Wan wasn't prepared to become a Jedi Master. There was too much on his mind, and while he could become a great mentor for Anakin, he didn't need to become a Jedi Master yet. His failures as a teacher couldn't be experimented on the Chosen One, though that wouldn't have been Obi-Wan's fault. At the same time, Anakin had no trust in anyone. He was meant to be with one man, the man who believed in him, Qui-Gon Jinn. Now that Jinn was dead, and that Obi-Wan was promised to train the boy, Anakin didn't have a true guidance. He had what would be classified to a child born in slavery as an older brother. The council looked at Sunube, as if they were begging the question. Tera sighed. He expressed that Anakin would only see Obi-Wan as an equal, not a teacher. There would be a lack of respect for his master because Obi-Wan wasn't confident enough to teach Anakin yet. An unconfident teacher would lead to a drastically confused and imbalanced student, especially one as powerful as the Chosen One. While the council looked at Tera awaiting his next move, he told him he didn't come for their approval. He was going to do this regardless. He just wanted to be respectful to those he used to serve with, and express to them that there was a greater sense of being found in giving rather than sticking to the code. A lesson, if you will, to some of the wisest in the Order. As Tera would phrase it, breaking the rules works more often than following them. While the council was strictly obedient to the code, having someone like Master Sunube go off with Anakin was a warming feeling. He would have a better teacher than Obi-Wan, and yet somehow the council never figured out that if they allowed Anakin to have a proper teacher or a guide, he wouldn't struggle. Regardless, Tera went back down into the youngling wing of the Jedi Temple, where he found himself a small boy, and a class he saw earlier in the day. The boy still had the same dazed look on his face. He didn't know how to understand why he was here or what he was doing here. It had only been a couple days since he had no friends, and it didn't feel like anyone had his back, at least not like Qui-Gon did. Qui-Gon was very empathetic to Anakin, and having his back and being there whenever he needed him. Anakin didn't feel that way with anyone he was currently with, but when he saw the old teacher, he was confused. Of course, Anakin recognized Sunube from the earlier trip through the Jedi archives, but he didn't really know who he was. Anakin just saw him as another empty face that was here or there. That was the beginning or end of it. He'd recognize him if he saw him again, but it didn't mean he knew who he was. Tera looked at the boy and told him to pack his things. A wave of fear shot through Anakin's body. Sunube told Anakin not to worry. There was no reason to fret, because it was a part of his training. Anakin would be trained the way he needed to be trained, and the best way to train the boy was away from the temple. Anakin was a bit nervous. He still didn't know where the old man would take him, but then Master Sunube introduced himself to Anakin, as Anakin learned that he should call the old Jedi Master Sunube. Anakin nodded as he packed up what little that he had to get ready for this expedition. Within hours, Sunube, Obi-Wan, and Anakin were in the hangar bay, loading their contents into a shuttle to get ready for takeoff. Neither the young Jedi knew where the Jedi Master was going to take them. The funny thing is that Master Sunube also didn't know where he was going to take them. He just knew that he needed to get them both away from the Jedi Temple. The Jedi shuttle took off into hyperspace, down one of the main hyperspace routes. They arrived in the Outer Rim, outside of a green and tan planet. The planet was Utapau. Master Sunube didn't know much about the planet, but he did know the Pau'uns, and that they were a peaceful people for the most part. They wouldn't be the type to go out of their way to harm anyone, so there was no worry for the Jedi to train here. The Jedi shuttle moved down through the atmosphere as it landed on the plains. There were massive craters on the ground. The 3 Jedi stood atop of the ramp as a door opened to the ground. Tera used his cane as he slowly made his way down the ramp as he found a rock to sit down on. The 2 younger Jedi followed him down. Tera told the 2 of them to unload the ship and set up camp. Obi-Wan went straight to work, and Anakin huffed and puffed as he moved to do the same. Sinube knew that there was something wrong here. It'd have to do something with his slavery past. Master Sinube knew that he needed to find a new way to get through to Anakin. Anything that Tera asked Anakin to do could be taken the wrong way, so he needed to find a way to get around that mental block inside of Anakin's head. Tera meditated as he thought about it. Obi-Wan and Anakin worked together as they unloaded some of the heavier objects. After they were done, Tera opened his eyes as he stepped out in front of the 2 Jedi and asked them to follow him. The 2 Jedi did. They were sweating. There was quite a bit of heat in the Utapau sun. Tera walked the Jedi over to a crater and told the Jedi to stand on their hands. Anakin was confused. He had never done that before. Obi-Wan naturally looked over to Anakin and told him to follow his lead. Anakin watched as Obi-Wan moved to his hands and stood on them. Anakin watched as he tried it and then fell flat on his back. Tera looked at Anakin and told him to get up. Always get up. Anakin looked over at Master Sinube as he rose to his feet. Tera told Anakin to try again, but this time, focus on the force surrounding him. Let it guide his movements. Sinube told Anakin to think of how natural the pod racer was. Feel the natural power in him given to the power threshold that he could achieve. It's all within him. He just needs to trust that it's there. Anakin nodded his head as he moved to the ground with his hands outstretched. He wanted to believe that he could do it, but he feared that he wouldn't be able to accomplish the task. Anakin would lean into it, focus his mind as he opens his eyes to the world upside down. Sunube looks at Skywalker and smiles, and then he asks Anakin to walk his way over to the edge of the cliff, where Obi-Wan was, still standing on his hands. Anakin walked his way over, and then Master Sinube told the 2 of them to focus. Feel the force surround them, letting it bind them together. He tells the 2 of them to clear their minds and let what's out come in. Master Sinube stood with his cane and climbed atop of it, using one of his legs to balance himself as he too closed his eyes. The 3 stood in their positions. It was stressful on the body, but if you trusted in and relied on the force, the body will take in all of it with great ease. When the mind loses focus, then the force loses balance. This was the first lesson. Hours would creep by as the Jedi stayed near the edge of the cliff, as the wind croaked through and blew through them. The sun across Utapau's flats began to creep down. Master Sinube looked down and told the 2 of them to step down from their places. Obi-Wan opened his eyes and got down from where he was. Anakin didn't budge. Tera looked at Skywalker and then to Obi-Wan, who looked as if he was going to try and jar Skywalker awake. Sinube waved off Obi-Wan and told him to focus. Anakin wasn't present. His body was, but his mind wasn't there. There was a duality present within the boy, and while he was currently in a consistent state of balance, he was shifting between light and dark. Obi-Wan could sense it before he was brought to the temple, but Tera was the first master who could see it, that there was truly a duality between the light and dark that was inside of Anakin, and that if it wasn't treated and trained properly, then it would fizzle out into a beast of rage-filled anger, specifically like the one that Tera had seen in his vision. Tera knelt down next to Anakin and raised his hand, feeling through the Force, and feeling every ounce of emotion that Anakin was experiencing. Tera was one with Anakin, and Anakin was one with Tera, though Anakin was unaware of it. The Force was surrounding him, and he was becoming a vessel of it. If he continued down this path of trusting the Force, like he trusted his instincts during the pod race, he would truly be an unstoppable force in the galaxy. Tera's eyes closed as he felt into the deep past of Skywalker. Anakin was open as a book right now, and the Force around was passing through all 3 Jedi. There was so much more down below inside of Anakin. Tera just had to keep searching. He could feel the changing tides within Anakin. The Force was strong with the boy, and he knew that if he kept going, he would find the answers that he wanted. After another hour, Anakin would lower himself down from the handstand and look at Master Sinube with confusion. Tera expressed that he did well. Anakin was confused, but Sinube guided him down the right path as Obi-Wan stood behind him, listening to all of what it was that Tera had to say. There was a lot to unpack about being a Jedi Master, but Obi-Wan had time to learn. He wasn't being rushed to learn and teach at the same time. As he listened to Sunube talk to Skywalker, he said that Anakin did very well, and Anakin expressed that he felt true completion within himself. There was things that bothered him, but it was an emotional experience in his own way. He felt like it was in a pod racer, but then he saw images of his mother and Qui-Gon. Tera asked if they meant a lot to him. The boy sat down in front of the two of them, and Obi-Wan moved in closer to listen. Anakin expressed that his mother was his everything to him. But for Anakin, the first person who really filled a missing role was Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon understood him. He listened to him and believed in him. Anakin expressed that he adored his mother, but Qui-Gon was the first fatherly figure he ever had, and losing him was a great travesty to Anakin. He didn't know how to go on without that prominent figure in his life, because that figure inspired him to be better and continuously better himself. Anakin expressed that Qui-Gon gave him a new expression of life. Of course, corresponding with the pod race that Anakin won, Qui-Gon brought the first sense of adventure into the life of a slave child. Anakin looked down and he said he didn't want to feel like a slave anymore. Tera asked why he still felt like a slave. Anakin said that with Qui-Gon he felt respected, but the few days inside the Jedi Temple he felt neglected, and he didn't feel like he had a chance to express himself. The other younglings, while they never had the chance to openly pick on him, would whisper behind his back. How could this boy be at our level already? He was the same age, but he was new to the temple. The children didn't understand him, and therefore, he was a target. He wasn't one of them, and that frightened them. Tera told Anakin that there was something else he wanted to say. Anakin hesitated, but he then felt comfortable enough to tell Tera that he felt like he was just a slave when Tera was telling them to unpack everything from the ship, while he sat there and did nothing. Tera smiled and told the boy that it wasn't slave labor, it was patience. It was a lesson of patience that he was teaching Anakin. While the new master never revealed their secrets, the lesson of unloading and the lesson of handstanding was at the very least about patience. The added bonus of balance was also part of the lesson. Anakin perked his head around as if he was confused, and then Tera explained as he put his hand on the boy's shoulders, as he told the two Jedi to look up into the night sky. The sun was eclipsed by darkness, and there was no light around. And he asked what the two Jedi saw. Obi-Wan looked at Anakin, and Anakin said, "Stars." Tera said that he was right, but he asked what made a star. Anakin shrugged his shoulders, he didn't know. Tera said patience. Of course, there was more than that, as Tera explained that gas and dust accumulate and then collapse from gravity, and that forms a star, but the process takes millions of years. Anakin looked at Master Sunube as Master Sunube expressed that stars were made with patience, because the brightest stars in the night sky show when they have sat dormant for millennia, waiting for their moment to shine the brightest. Anakin's eyes opened as his mouth fell to the dirt. Tera told Anakin that he could be the brightest among the stars, but he was no longer a slave. Pointing around to the plateaus of Utapau, he said that there is nothing around here from stopping him from escaping and being who he wanted to be. Being away from the temple wasn't a field trip, it was a guidance of patience. He told Anakin that while the teachers at the temple were great, they weren't what he needed, nor was the code. But Anakin, he said, is not a slave to that code. Anakin had lived a life of a slave, not fortitude, not learning, but working. Tera told Anakin that the Force is within him, and everything needs to become a great Jedi is in there too. But Anakin needs to be patient, like the great stars wide and vast, and grow into the brightest of all of them, because it was truly possible with Anakin Skywalker. Tera looked over at Kenobi, and then told Anakin to listen carefully, because Anakin was like Kenobi, and while neither of them knew it, they were similar to one another. But Anakin was missing one key component. Anakin looked on as Tera stood, and said that Obi-Wan's mind was unbreakable. He was a human, just like Anakin, but Obi-Wan was balanced. He had his emotions, but they were in check. Tera looked at Obi-Wan and closed his eyes, feeling the inner turmoil of a young man who had just lost his master. Sunube opened his eyes and told Anakin to reflect on the past with peace, trust in the moment with patience, and look towards the future with guidance. Obi-Wan wasn't fuming about Qui-Gon. He had to let him go, as did they all. While Qui-Gon would have been a great master for Anakin, Tera was who he had, and he would try to fill that role as best as he could, but Anakin needed to trust in the moment with patience. Obi-Wan's eyes had water in them as he looked at Master Sinube. The old master was incredible. He was a man of intelligence, and he was a teacher of reputation. Tera smiled at the two of them, and told them that much like the world around them, it was time to get rest, and prepare a fire. Tera looked down at Anakin and Obi-Wan, and told them that was all for today's lesson. Tera had many more lessons planned for the Jedi, but it would take months to get to each and every single lesson that he had planned. Sunube was a renowned master throughout the temple, though he had never had a challenge of teaching a student and a master at the same time. His long-term goal was to release Obi-Wan and Anakin together, so that Anakin would have respect for his master, and that Obi-Wan would have love for his student. And while it would be easy to get Obi-Wan to love his student, he wasn't entirely sure about Anakin's readiness to accept that respect for Obi-Wan. While Anakin was bright, and he knew he was powerful, there was something even more with him. Anakin was arrogant. He had the temptation to achieve victory like no other, and he wanted victory at no matter what the cost was to get it. While Anakin was just a boy, as a boy this would not fly as a Jedi, and Tera knew it. While Sinube had no doubts about Obi-Wan and how well he could teach Anakin, he wasn't sure if Anakin would be able to calm down from arrogance with an inexperienced teacher. While there would be a lot of qualities about young Skywalker that most were certainly up for debate, especially with the darkness within him, they were not incurable qualities. These were qualities that those would take an experienced master to fix, and Obi-Wan was not that master yet. As the three went to sleep, Tera was taken to a dark place again, though this time it was different. It was a massive swamp, and a cave that he was guided down by a distant voice that was talking to him. Tera continued down as he felt the world around him and the distant breathing of mechanical beasts. A large shadow creeped around the corner, and a red blaze exploded, and then he saw a little boy. It was Anakin, telling his master that he was scared. The second Master Sinube asked what was wrong, the boy turned into a raging skeleton with a missing piece of face yelling at him, telling him that he did this to him. Tera fell back and out and looked over to see Skywalker and Kenobi sleeping. Sinube took a deep breath, and before he turned around, he saw the massive hulking skeleton looking at him. It didn't say a word. It just breathed. Tera moved his feet as he ignited his lightsaber and backed up as he started walking towards him. Tera tried to protect the two who were sleeping, as their bodies were thrown into the crater that they slept by. The beast walked towards Tera as it lifted the Jedi shuttle and threw it at him with ease. Tera held it with all of his might as he looked at the hulking monster as he held the shuttle over his head. Tera used all of his might to pass it away as he was lifted from his feet. As he woke up from his sleep and looked at the dying fire that sat between the three Jedi, Tera sighed as he rubbed his eyes, and then he saw Anakin staring at him. Sunube looked at him as Anakin tilted his head back and lunged across the fire. Sunube lunged to his feet and looked around. The fire was dead, the students were sleeping, and the sun was rising. Tera hadn't moved that fast since he was just a boy. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. It was terrifying. He was terrified himself. Tera knew that there was something evil within Anakin, and he knew that he had to drive it out of him. If he got it out of him, maybe, just maybe, Anakin's future might be saved. Though Sinube knew he would be plagued by these dreams and visions if he didn't eradicate that darkness, he knew he could do so much more for Anakin than just eradicate the darkness. Sinube would use his exercises as best he could to work around that darkness inside of Anakin. He knew that it were possible to use both the dark side and the light side of the Force. Master Sinube knew that a student can teach the Master, and because of that fact, he had no worries regarding the teaching of Anakin Skywalker. The answers he wanted to know, he knew would come to him when he least expected. The path of all teachers was failing, but learning how to get back up, which ironically was the first thing he taught Anakin. While there was a lot to unpack mentally about the boy, Tera knew that together with Obi-Wan, they could turn Anakin into the perfect Jedi, regardless of what the code had to say about who a Jedi was. Tera would continue teaching Obi-Wan and Anakin on Utapau for an extended month and a half, continuing over the lessons and getting up from one's failures, learning the virtues of patience and love of the Force. While those lessons were mostly for Anakin, the lessons for Obi-Wan stuck home with understanding of every kind, forthright direction, and understanding unhealthy traits of a young Jedi. Obi-Wan and Anakin took well to their direction, though Tera knew that the two Jedi needed a change of location. While being on an empty plain sounds exciting, it really wasn't, though the stars at night were a gift bestowed by the Force itself. For Tera, he was struggling a little bit. He was hoping for Obi-Wan to reach the right place in his teaching levels and understanding, because Tera was having stress dreams and night terrors that kept him up most nights, if not every single night that they were on Utapau. While the Force was sustaining, and he found time to achieve rest, there was still that dark eminence that radiated off of Anakin, and it was very concerning to Tera. While Sunube wouldn't beset Anakin onto a path of failure, he was concerned where the path Anakin was heading would take him. Though with a formal organized teacher, the terror of a possible future was becoming undone. Sunube had the two Jedi help him unpack their camp and load the Jedi shuttle so that their next journey could begin. Of course, Sunube wanted to keep the two Jedi isolated from most populations, but there was a place where Master Sunube knew where he could take the Jedi. It was a mostly unknown planet with a deep-rooted connection to the Force. The three Jedi landed their shuttle on the swampland planet of Dagobah. The three Jedi sauntered out of the shuttle. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked over at Master Sunube as he nodded at them, as if he was telling them that this was where they were meant to be. The two Jedi unpacked the ship as Sunube vanished into the swamps, following the will of the Force. He could feel that there was something that would be a great interest here. He found himself a darkened hole in the ground. Sunube knew that he'd found the reason that he was actually here. He returned back to the camp and found the two Jedi looking at him as they had just finished unpacking everything across a flat area, where there were plenty of reptiles and the swamp was dense and humid and it was full of duck. The Jedi robes stuck to your skin. The planet would test the strength of the three Jedi and their resilience to adversity. Sunube would begin the training for the two Jedi as he made them work their hardest and use their grit to survive the elements of Dagobah. The planet was harsh and the Force itself was dark and congested. For Anakin, it would test him the hardest. Obi-Wan was experienced enough to handle the dark side of the Force here, and he had no issues with working against it. But for Anakin, the dark side was tempting. It was pulling and it was winning. While what Tera taught Anakin was helpful, it wasn't exactly enough to fully combat the natural affinity to the boy that he had for the dark side. Anakin would be pulled between light and dark, and he would be told by his master to travel down into a cave, alone. Anakin was a bit scared, but Sunube told him to let the Force guide him, and as Anakin journeyed down into the cave, he saw rays of blue light. He looked over and saw what looked to be Master Qui-Gon. Anakin walked over and looked up as it turned around and beaming yellow eyes looked down onto him. Fear shot through Anakin's body as he fell back and looked around panicking. The sounds of a deep-seated lie crossed through his minds. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some consider to be unnatural. Anakin turned around as a massive cloud formed around him, and he looked out into his reflection inside the eyes of a deadly mask. And then he was thrown out of the cloud, as he looked up and saw Qui-Gon, who knelt down next to the boy. Anakin looked at him as Qui-Gon spoke. He asked Anakin if he believed that he were the chosen one. Anakin expressed that he didn't know, he wasn't sure. Qui-Gon looked at the boy and told him that he believed that he would bring balance to the Force. He would face his demons, and he would stand the test of time as he turned himself into the one he was meant to become. Anakin looked up with confusion as Qui-Gon told Anakin to trust in the Force, and trust in the light. It would guide him to become the person he knew he could become. Anakin nodded his head as Qui-Gon guided him forward. As Anakin took his first steps, Qui-Gon's voice whispered throughout his mind, saying, "These are your first steps." Anakin continued forward as he followed the light into a vision that was bright and full of silhouettes. He couldn't understand, but he kept following. Eventually, Anakin would climb from the cave and look around into the musky swamplands around him. While Anakin would find his way back to camp, Sunube wanted to make a focus while here on Dagobah that they should work on Anakin's rage, anger, and sadness. There was a lot to unpack in a world like Dagobah, and with the dark side energy so strong, Sunube would be able to dive deeper into Anakin's emotions. When he dug into those elements, he would be able to find what it was that was really needed to be taken care of with Anakin. There was so much more imbalance within Anakin than he truly realized beforehand. Sunube would work closely with Anakin and even go as far as to dive down deep into the cave with Anakin. It would take his time, but Anakin would eventually lower himself down from his anger, but the turmoil was still within him, and then Sunube remembered that there was something he needed to do for a student. For the student to truly respect the Master, he had to do what Anakin would think was impossible. So, after a full month on Dagobah, the trio would depart for a planet that looked all too familiar to young Skywalker. They traveled back to Tatooine. Anakin was so excited, and Obi-Wan and Sunube watched as the boy ran out of the ship towards the streets of Mos Espa. Tera looked at Obi-Wan and said to him that keeping the boy away from his emotions would be a crime to the boy. The emotions make him special, and while they are against the code, what was more important was that Anakin felt treated fairly. Obi-Wan asked what he meant, and Tera explained, and because Anakin was born a boy with emotions and expressions and taught how to use them, it wasn't the Jedi's job to take them away from him. Tera continued, though saying that it was their job to embolden them, and while that would take time, Anakin could very well use those emotions to bolster himself into a great Jedi. Tera continued as he told Kenobi that training Anakin was the most difficult task he had ever had, and it was taking everything out of him to not fail the boy. Tera expressed that he trusted Obi-Wan to be the teacher that Anakin needed. Obi-Wan didn't truly understand what this meant, but he told his master that he did understand what he was trying to say. Tera told Kenobi to follow the boy, but then bring him back and guide him, teach him how to harmonize with his anger, how to rise above love, how to settle his attachments, and even more so, be the father that Anakin needed. Obi-Wan turned and looked at the Jedi Master, who smiled softly, and then looked down the ramp at Kenobi. Obi-Wan followed Anakin into the streets, and followed along with him as he ran to his old house. He found his way around and searched for his mother. Eventually, after a little bit of a long hunt, Obi-Wan and Anakin eventually found his mother. She was still working as a slave as Anakin ran and wrapped his arms around her. Shmi was so happy to see her boy. Obi-Wan felt a second-hand happiness as he watched the two rejoice in their love for one another. Shmi invited the two back into her home. As they spent time with her, Obi-Wan found time when Anakin wasn't around, and gave Anakin's mother a bunch of credits so that she could be free from her slavery. The Jedi Shuttle had a bunch of credits, and he brought them per request of Master Sunube, though he would have done it himself. Anakin wouldn't find out until they left his mother again. Anakin would have his woes removed, and a new sense of respect and fondness for Obi-Wan Kenobi. When the two Jedi returned to the shuttle, they found Master Sunube. He was laying on the floor. Obi-Wan and Anakin ran over to check on him, and he was gone. Master Sunube had overexerted himself, and while doing so, cost himself his life. The stresses of teaching Anakin got to him, and the night terrors caused him an unrelenting struggle. Tera Sinube overworked himself, and aged himself further. The fragile old man gave his final love to his two students. He knew they were both ready to succeed without him. While it was never his intention to pass away, the old man rested his eyes and moved into the Force. When Obi-Wan and Anakin stumbled upon the body, they knew they had to get him home, to be buried where he belonged. Obi-Wan took Anakin and told him that it was time that the two of them stuck to one another, as master and apprentice, as he promised that they would. First, they would return to Coruscant so that they could have Jedi Master Sunube buried. Anakin and Obi-Wan were very saddened to bury the old man, but he was aging and it would have been his time anytime soon. Sadly, it was on Tatooine where he died. The funeral was very hard. Anakin lost 2 Jedi Masters in the span of 3 months, and he was now afraid to have a new master. He didn't want to get attached to Obi-Wan and lose him too. During the funeral, as the light lit the room, Obi-Wan leaned down and reached his arm around Anakin. It was extremely unnatural for a Jedi to do this, and extremely unnatural for Obi-Wan, but he knew it needed to be done. It was an outreach to Anakin so that Anakin understood that Obi-Wan was really trying his best to do the best he could for Anakin. Anakin settled himself with Obi-Wan, as he told his master that he was afraid. Obi-Wan looked over and asked what he was afraid of. Anakin told him he was afraid of losing him too, as Obi-Wan told Anakin that that wouldn't happen. He also told the boy that the two of them would continue the training that Master Sunube had started. Anakin was curious about what this meant, but Obi-Wan expressed that everything would be okay as long as he trusted him. Anakin had no choice but to trust Obi-Wan. And after the funeral, before the Jedi Council could get a hold of Obi-Wan or Anakin, the two of them were gone. They took the Jedi shuttle out to the planet Ilum. Of course, this was irregular. Usually classes of students went to Ilum to claim lightsaber crystals, but now it would be just Obi-Wan and Anakin. When they landed on the icy world, Obi-Wan told Anakin that he would have to trust his instincts, trusting everything he had been taught in the recent months by Master Sunube. If he trusted what he was taught, then he would be able to find his Kyber crystal. Then Obi-Wan would be able to show Anakin how to create his very own lightsaber. As the two of them entered the temple on Ilum, Obi-Wan pointed Anakin towards the door. He told Anakin to trust his instincts, and his lightsaber crystal would reveal itself. Anakin looked at his master and then hurried into the temple as he looked for the crystal. He closed his eyes and trusted the Force as he ran in. Anakin followed through the caves and tunnels within the massive cave as he found little sub-caves that led to different directions. Anakin trusted what Master Sinube told him, as he trusted the Force and let it guide him. Anakin listened to the Force as he felt lost. He didn't know where to go and he fell to his knees. He knew he had to rely on the Force to help find his crystal, but the lesson of the Force was that he wasn't lost. He was just at the beginning of his journey, and because he was at the beginning, he had little to worry about when it came to being lost. Anakin needed to trust that Kenobi and the Force would guide him. The Force was telling Anakin to believe in the Force for the longer part of his journey. Anakin opened his eyes as he felt his heart settle within what the Force had to tell him, and he looked over and saw a beaming crystal. Anakin walked over and grabbed it as he pulled it out of the ice and ran back to his master. Anakin didn't realize it, but he was just at the entrance. He didn't have to go physically far, but he did have to journey very far mentally. When he came back out of the ice, the door had almost frozen over, all the way down to the bottom. The time passed quickly for Anakin, but for Obi-Wan, it was a bit of a long wait. A lesson for both Jedi. The Master learned patience and trust in his student, and his student learned trust for his teacher and in the Force. Obi-Wan would congratulate Anakin on his crystal, as the two of them would return to the shuttle for departure to another planet. Obi-Wan wanted to stay true to Sinube's teaching methods by keeping Skywalker away from the Jedi Temple, and even more so, the Council. It wasn't Sinube's disliking of the Council, but it was his disbelief in their innate decision to not train the boy with a true Jedi Master. Obi-Wan took Anakin to a planet far into the reaches of space, on the world called Ahch-To. It would be a great separation away from the people of the galaxy as well, and the Jedi. While the Jedi were in hyperspace, Obi-Wan showed Anakin how to construct his lightsaber. Before they left the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan grabbed a couple of hilts for Anakin to possibly turn into his own. He chose a bright metallic lightsaber with a hilt on the bottom that was darkened a little bit. It would take the entire duration of their hyperspace journey for Anakin to learn and figure out how to craft his lightsaber in a way that he wanted to create a functioning lightsaber that wouldn't blow the ship up or blow Anakin and anybody else up. Obi-Wan again expressed praise for his student, who picked up on this rather quickly. As the two landed their shuttle on the ancient home planet of the Jedi, Anakin and Obi-Wan traveled up the Great Island. They found themselves at the top, where Obi-Wan would ask Anakin what it was that he felt. Anakin would express that he felt scared and confident. Anakin believed that he would become a great Jedi, but he also was scared of losing Obi-Wan. Kenobi asked Anakin about his attachments, and as the two of them sat down in the tall grass at the top of the island, Anakin told Obi-Wan that he believed in his ability to succeed as a student, but he was also terrified of losing his master. While Shmi was no longer a slave and free, the main concern to Anakin was losing one Jedi he was close to, Obi-Wan. Anakin was close to Jin and Sunube, and losing both of them took a toll on him, because they were people he looked up to, and while Anakin was currently looking up to Obi-Wan like a master, he was afraid that he would lose Obi-Wan too. Kenobi told Anakin that while attachments were not the Jedi way, he understood why Anakin was attached to him. Anakin asked about attachments, and Kenobi had to think fast on his feet. He knew he would be doing Anakin wrong if he didn't address the attachments, but the fear of doing such a wrong move made Obi-Wan worry about his response. Obi-Wan decided that he would ask if there was anyone else that Anakin felt attached to. Anakin told Obi-Wan that it was Kenobi, his mother, and a little bit of an attachment to the Queen of Naboo. Obi-Wan tilted his head a little, and he understood that the boy had a crush and he wanted to know about this attachment. Obi-Wan expressed and said that it was natural for everyone to have attachments, even Jedi. Anakin looked at Obi-Wan as Obi-Wan talked about a woman he fell in love with. Anakin listened as Obi-Wan told Anakin that he had to choose between the Order and the woman. While Obi-Wan never knew what extent Satine loved him, he did know that he would have left the Order for her, and to be with her, if she said the word. Well, he didn't leave the Order, obviously. He told Anakin that he believed in the Code, and while he wouldn't make that choice for Anakin, he would make it easier for Anakin to handle being a Jedi, and having little attachments, and none that really constituted a need to leave the Order. Anakin asked what he meant, and Obi-Wan explained that he would be given tools to succeed as a Jedi, the way the Jedi wanted those within the Order to operate, though it was up to Anakin if he wanted to follow that route. If Anakin followed the training of Jin, Sunube, and Kenobi, he would make a fine Jedi, a far greater Jedi than the three of them combined. But if he became entrapped by his emotions, he would forever struggle with being a Jedi, and that wasn't what Obi-Wan wanted for him. Anakin looked at Kenobi and said what Qui-Gon said to him, that he would become a Jedi. Obi-Wan smiled and told Anakin that it was time to begin. With an already established connection and respect for his master, the training would be a bit of a breeze for Anakin. There would be a lot for Anakin to learn, but because he was being trained by one-on-one, he was able to rapidly excel without the burden of other students singling him out or belittling him. Anakin was able to find a healthy balance between the emotions of a slave and the prowess of a Jedi. Anakin and Obi-Wan would grow an immense bond with one another as well. This bond would be a type of bond that Anakin needed, a father-son bond, and a true master and apprentice bond. Obi-Wan was always capable to be that teacher for Anakin, but he needed to be guided in the right direction to be exactly what his student needed. Anakin needed a Jedi open to helping him with his emotions, and it took Obi-Wan giving up his vulnerability to allow Anakin to see that Jedi were not just robots, but actual living beings. Obi-Wan expressing his past with Satine made Anakin feel a sense of relation. He was able to be like Obi-Wan and move on from Padme. Anakin's dreams wouldn't be filled with Padme, rather they'd focus on what the Force was trying to guide him to do. With Ahch-To as their staging grounds, Obi-Wan and Anakin had a lot of opportunity to voyage into the depths of the darkness and feel the heights of the light of the Force. Their potential to grow was unlimited, and without an overseeing master, Obi-Wan would make mistakes, but these mistakes wouldn't be costly to Anakin's development, nor would they cause Anakin to feel any way superior to his master. Anakin had a very deep respect for his master, and he didn't feel like he was better than him. Years would fly by as the two Jedi spent years on Ahch-To. The only Jedi Master that would visit the two of them would be Master Yoda. Anakin and Yoda would also grow a bond with one another, and while Anakin wasn't the perfect Jedi, he was the best version of a Jedi that a former slave would ever be able to become. When Yoda arrived, he didn't get in the way of Kenobi's teachings, he just observed. And while it could be easy for Obi-Wan to run out of lessons with the rapid progression of Anakin's skill, he had the ancient Jedi texts that provided information for him to take out of. For Obi-Wan and Anakin, their bond grew into a true respect and understanding for one another. Anakin, being alone with Obi-Wan, had no reason to be arrogant, and the power trip that he had inside of him was stripped from him. Anakin and Obi-Wan both grew their hair out, as they both became almost twins of a sort, except Obi-Wan had a beard to show for it. Because of Anakin's acceleration, he would be able to pass the trials early, and he would be able to be the first Jedi in more than millennia to pass the Padawan trials on Ahch-To. He would hold this with great pride and great happiness. Obi-Wan and Anakin would begin their journey throughout the galaxy as proven master and knight. The two of them would help those in need, and this would be where Anakin would learn from his master the art of negotiation. Even more so, Obi-Wan would bring Anakin to Mandalore to interact with Duchess Satine, who would teach him how to think without his lightsaber. It was a useful tactic, something that Obi-Wan tried to install on his apprentice. After a while, Anakin would become the perfect making of a Jedi Knight. In the eyes of the Council, he was the perfect Jedi. In the heart of Anakin, he knew he was fully himself, and who he wanted to be. Obi-Wan and Anakin explored a happy medium that wouldn't allow the Council to lose trust in Skywalker, and while Anakin would never interact with Sidious, his first interactions with Palpatine would come nearly a decade after his first interaction with the newly elected Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. Anakin's power was unrivaled at this point, and he knew it, but it didn't get to his head. Anakin was calm in demeanor, a good listener, and strikingly talented in everything he did. Anakin also became well versed as a student of Form 5 and Form 2. Anakin's balance on Ahch-To created his willingness to learn a more graceful form of combat, and while Anakin had a very rudimentary form of Form 2 from the sacred texts, he did have Form 2 under his belt. For Anakin's return to the Jedi Temple, the temple would be very much so different to him. When he returned, it was a completely different atmosphere. Jedi Masters came over and talked to him, and many people showed interest in his progress as a Jedi. The Jedi were excited to see what he had to offer. There were still those, of course, that doubted him, but the fact that was, over the past 10 years, he had no reason to feel intimidated by anybody. His bond with Obi-Wan was more than enough for him, and he had no need to rekindle a falling in love feeling, though Anakin would have his first interaction with Palpatine since returning, which was a bit awkward. Palpatine was trying to test the waters, trying to embolden Anakin, though it was evident that the elderly politician was kind of rough at this. The last time they interacted, Anakin was just a boy, so he had no reason to overthink Palpatine's weird actions. As the next couple months would return, Anakin would have the opportunity to reunite with the Senator of Naboo, Padme Amidala. While she was impressed to see how far Anakin had come, sporting a style similar to that of Qui-Gon Jinn, and already a Jedi Knight, Anakin was calm and collected when he saw her for the first time, after all these years. As Anakin was assigned to protect Padme by himself, he remembered the feelings he used to have for her, and while she was beautiful as ever, he felt nothing more than a lustful attraction to her. In Anakin's mind, this attraction wasn't worth his time. While she really was a beautiful woman, and her political stance was good as well, she was a politician, and Anakin had no real reason to believe that politicians were good people. Sure, she was sweet to him 10 years ago, but she, with all of her money, could have freed Shmi, and him, but she didn't. Anakin would find this repulsive. Sure, being a 14-year-old queen of a beautiful planet was difficult when stuck on a dust bowl like Tatooine, but her priorities weren't getting rid of slavery, it was getting off of Tatooine. Anakin didn't have much respect for her in that sense. The Jedi returned and freed Shmi. It was Obi-Wan that did it, the Jedi who never met Shmi, who freed her. While on the other hand, the Queen, who was offered residence, won a new part for her ship, and taken off Tatooine by Anakin, never thought twice about Shmi. At least that much was true from Anakin's perspective. Regardless, Anakin didn't hold any resentment towards Padme for it. He was just here on a mission, and the mission was to protect her from any more possible assassination attempts. Anakin would eventually, though, be led into a chase across the city that would find him catching a bounty hunter by the name of Zam Wesell. Anakin's patience got to him, as he caught her inside of a bar without removing any of her limbs. When she was caught, Anakin was able to find out that a bounty hunter by the name of Jango Fett put her up to the task. While Anakin didn't know where to find him, she expressed that he was currently on world, but he was one of the best, if not the best bounty hunter in the galaxy at the moment. Anakin understood, and he would report back to the Jedi Council. Anakin would be dispatched to Naboo, where he would continue protecting the Senator. He would spend a lot of time with her here, and all this time was just innocent chatting. There wasn't much going on for Anakin, but for Padme, her emotions were misconstrued, and Anakin could feel it through the Force. And while Anakin remembered his training, he wasn't exactly concerned. He didn't have any attraction for Padme. He was simply doing what it was that he was ordered to do by the Jedi Council. Without a lead to Geonosis, the Separatist droid armies would be unleashed on the Outer Rim world called Ryloth, the planet of the Twi'leks. The Jedi would learn of this, and the Senate would immediately give emergency powers to the Chancellor. While Anakin didn't care for politics, he knew that if war was on the horizon, the power should be hands in the people rather than a single man. But the Chancellor commissioned a Grand Army of the Republic, a Grand Army of the Republic that would be found on Kamino, not too far away from Geonosis, and immediately deployed into action. The first battle of the Clone Wars would be a bloodbath. The Jedi would go in with hundreds of members to relieve the people of Ryloth from the droid invasion, and with the Clone Army, chaos would erupt. Ryloth would be turned into a war zone, and the likes of Count Dooku would use civilians as bait to lure the Jedi and trap them with massive explosions. The Separatists took their side in this conflict as the more vile of the two, using civilian population members as cannon fodder in a war that they didn't want to fight in. It wouldn't be long before more systems would fall to the Separatists. Toydaria and Christophsis were next. Master Yoda would be swiftly dispatched to Toydaria, and Anakin and Obi-Wan would go to Christophsis. The Clone Wars were at full speed, and there was no turning back. The Jedi became generals, and Anakin was assigned his own Clone Legion and his own Padawan, which he took with great happiness, though, on the other side of things, she was a bit of a pain in the Sarlacc pit. Anakin had a long way to go with Ahsoka Tano. She was arrogant, annoying, vivacious, and incredibly unresponsive to orders. She would need a lot of work, and Anakin would have to do this while under the pressure of being a general on the front lines. The war effort would be rough, and the war would test his grit, though Anakin would every so often be pulled from battle, and he would find it really annoying. The Chancellor would continuously pull Anakin from battle throughout the war, and while there would always be, in quotations, a reason for it, there was never really a good one to keep Skywalker away from his troops. During one battle, Anakin would have enough and disobey the orders of the Supreme Chancellor and stay with his troops when General Pung Krell would come to relieve him from his command. Krell and Anakin would get into a debacle. Anakin knew Umbar would test the grit of his men and their numbers, and he would rather be here with them. He knew of Krell's statistics when it came to battle casualties, and Anakin was not going to allow Krell to lead his men. While Anakin was stern on his decision, so was Krell, who decided to lead from the back of the army, though the 501st only saw their true leader as General Skywalker. The siege of Umbar would drag on. The darkened world was not hospitable to anyone who wasn't Umbaran, and the natives made it ever so present that the clone army would have to go in and drag them out. Anakin, who was leading his battalion, brought the clones to a quicker and more decisive victory over their first objective, which was an air base close to the capital city. At the same time, Kenobi was leading an assault on the other side at the capital city, though there was unhappiness within the ranks after a skirmish that Anakin wasn't a part of. He missed it, but when he saw men of the 501st and 212th walking towards an airfield, he stopped Captain Rex and asked what was happening. Rex explained what had happened. Anakin reflected for a moment. He knew something was off about Palpatine's request to remove him from battle. He just never assumed it would come from the Jedi General that was assigned to take from his role. Anakin would go with his men to confront General Krell. And when they arrived in the observation deck, Anakin moved around to the far end of the room so that Krell would have no chance to escape. While it was never his plan to get into a fight with Krell, it turned out to be inevitable when 2 lightsabers were pulled out and 4 blades ignited as the clones opened fire after some discussion. Anakin ignited his blade and confronted Paul Krell, who clashed with the Chosen One. Anakin was a very skilled duelist, but other than some encounters with Dooku and Ventress scattered across the war, he hadn't really had many duels to the death. He also never lost his forearm. Krell was quick, and he was a powerful duelist, but Anakin moved from Form 5 to Form 2 as he sealed the fate of the former Jedi. Anakin parried hits, and then danced delicately around as he stayed loose on his feet. Anakin's blade moved with precision and patience as it cut into Krell's arm, knocking the Jedi off guard. Anakin stood tall and confidently as he told Krell to stand down, which of course he didn't do. Anakin looked at the clones and nodded as they all opened fire. Krell, without one of his arms, was still able to deflect blaster bolts until Anakin cut off that arm too, and the clones gunned down the traitor. While this would be seen as a massive betrayal and damaging, it didn't stop Obi-Wan and the 212th from securing the capital single-handedly. After the battle, the 501st would return to Coruscant before their next deployment. By this time, Ahsoka had grown more accustomed to Anakin Skywalker, being patient, trusting in the Force, and being the Jedi she never knew she could become. Upon Anakin's return to Coruscant, he would meet up with his apprentice and instructor for a small amount of time, before he dismissed her for a meeting with the High Council. Anakin presented himself in front of the entire Jedi Council and expressed to them that he believed that Palpatine was behind the Clone Wars or something one or another. While Anakin wasn't onto the larger plot, he thought the coincidence of being pulled from active combat while also having a traitorous Jedi among the ranks was a bit suspicious. Even more so, the fact that every time Palpatine pulled Anakin from combat, it was an atrocious battle for his men. Every time more men died, and while Anakin expressed that it could be a coincidence of the lack of leadership, he told the council that the clone captain would inform him that he missed hundreds of thousands more droids than per usual. While the council took into account what Anakin said, it gifted some more questionable members more confidence in Anakin. Because Anakin was seen as close to the Chancellor throughout the war, some of the council members thought Anakin was a bit against the Jedi, which this revelation the council believed that Anakin was truly on their side. At this point, Anakin also expressed that he saw great potential in his Padawan's movements towards becoming a Jedi Knight. The council looked back at Anakin with even more shock in their eyes. Ahsoka was only 16, she was still so young. So much more time to become a Jedi Knight would be needed, but Anakin expressed that ever since she began with him, she had overcome so much. She was obedient and kind-hearted. She listened, and she always did what was best when she was in command. Anakin expressed to the council that they should think about what he said, mostly about the Chancellor, but also about Ahsoka. Anakin's upbringing led him astray from trusting politicians like Palpatine, so trusting him wasn't exactly on the top of his list. Within the next month and a half, Anakin and the 501st would be brought back to Coruscant after the slaughtering the Separatists in the Mid-Rim. Ahsoka and Anakin would be brought to the High Council. While Ahsoka thought the two of them were in trouble for their more than 2 war crimes a week tradition, it turned out to be for something else. Ahsoka would be brought in to be knighted for completing her trials as a Jedi Padawan. While the council thought she was particularly young, she was trained by the Chosen One, who used the lessons he was taught and the war itself to bring Ahsoka into a perfect balance of a Jedi Knight. Though Ahsoka would be dismissed, Anakin was confused why he wasn't dismissed as well. Kenobi would arise and move to stand behind Skywalker, Windu would tell Anakin that he was welcome into the High Council for his efforts as a Jedi Master and his prowess as a positive impact on the Order itself. Anakin was leagues more powerful than most people in the Order, rivaling the power of Windu and Yoda themselves. He was a renowned duelist, a leader, and a kind man who stayed loyal to those around him. His actions as a Jedi and a man brought him to the Tower of Power in the Jedi Temple. Anakin would be incredibly grateful for the opportunity, but incredibly humbled by it as well. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Obi-Wan looked into the eyes of the young man he trained and raised and congratulated him, telling him how proud he really was. Anakin would accept his role on the council. When the council was dismissed, Obi-Wan and Mace Windu would request that Anakin would stay behind with the two of them. As the three Jedi looked across the sprawling city in the distance, they would tell Anakin about a special mission. Anakin could feel through the Force as the sun cascaded across his face as he turned around and said that he would do it. Obi-Wan and Mace stuttered for a moment. Anakin said he would spy on the Chancellor, as he expressed that the Chancellor's actions had become more and more tiresome ever since the beginning of the war. Anakin knew all about the Sith and their lusts for power. Especially having been in the caves of Ahch-To and Dagobah, he was extremely familiar with the dark side and the influence it had over those who used it. And Anakin, because the Jedi were suspicious of Palpatine for being a Sith Lord, he knew he could draw it out of him. Anakin would be more reliant on the Chancellor. While Palpatine wasn't dumb, he knew that this was too good to be true. The idea that Anakin was ignoring him was calling him to be a bit suspicious. Anakin found a way around it though. Anakin began expressing falsehoods of the Jedi and also made himself vulnerable within the Force. While Anakin was a very, very powerful Force user, he realized that if he made his presence vulnerable, a true Sith Lord would take the bait. While he knew that if the Sith were smart enough to sneak into the public politics and become leader of the Galactic Republic, Anakin had to put on his best performance. And so, when Anakin went in and explained that he had enough of the Jedi, it caught Palpatine off guard. He kicked a chair, and with a weak Force aurora surrounding him, he became vulnerable with himself. He said he couldn't believe that the Jedi would produce someone like Krell. It was disheartening to be a Jedi. And when there was a monster like that running around the temple, Anakin then expressed how nice it was to have that revenge, to exert revenge on the Jedi who made fools of the Republic. It would take a little while, but Palpatine would distinctively keep the 501st out of combat so that he could press harder into Anakin. Palpatine had to catch up, and he was playing the game that Anakin set him up for. A life away from politics led Anakin to be a master manipulator he never realized he could become. Palpatine dug his evil nails into Anakin and didn't let go. Except it was the other way around. While Anakin made his essence seem like a vulnerable, easily turnable Jedi, he was a fortress and he was going to flip the script. Anakin would visit Palpatine and ask Palpatine about achieving power, and he watched as Palpatine's evil eyes glistened. Palpatine gestured for Anakin to join him on a walk. The two walked with one another, as Palpatine began setting his plans in motion with Skywalker. While the armies weren't in place to make an effective use of Order 66, that wasn't the point. Sith wanted to throw Anakin into a loop, make him question himself and the Order, make him feel that there was more out there than what the Jedi could show him. Without explicitly saying that he was trained in the dark side of the Force, of course. When Palpatine revealed that he knew of more power in the Force, and that there was more than what the Jedi could show him, Anakin knew he had him. Without releasing the vulnerability of his mind, Anakin played Palpatine, and then, when Palpatine laid down the foundation of interest from Anakin, he released him, telling him that there was more pressing matters that had to come first. Anakin understood as he thanked Palpatine for listening. Anakin would return to the temple and immediately go back to the Jedi Council. It wasn't that Palpatine was dumb for this, it was the fact that Anakin played the same game, and won. The Council would move in immediately. All the present members would follow Anakin as he marched them through the halls of the Jedi Temple. Anakin would lead the Jedi across the city, then using his immense power, he would conceal their Force essence when they showed up on the Senate building. And then, they would enter the office of the Chancellor, where he would be surrounded, but more importantly surprised. While he knew he couldn't beat all the Jedi, he was more so surprised that Anakin had been a spy the entire time, and how much of a fool he was not to see that that was the case. Though Palpatine knew he could manipulate this back at the Jedi, as he surrendered into their custody. Palpatine was a genius, and he knew that he could accuse the Jedi of treason against the Republic for crimes that he did not commit. While at the same time, the other Jedi would take Palpatine away, Anakin and Obi-Wan would begin a deep investigation into the Chancellor's office. On the other side of the galaxy, Dooku would feel a disturbance in the Force. he knew his master had been captured. Obi-Wan and Anakin assessed everything, and while they found 2 lightsabers that emitted red blades, they were shocked when they realized something they never noticed before. Throughout the office of Palpatine, there were ancient Sith artifacts everywhere. Obi-Wan rubbed his beard as Anakin pointed them out, exclaiming that they were talked about in the Jedi books on Act 2. The books warned of amulet statues of articles of prize to the Sith that would be used to harness and focus their true power. The Jedi cracked the case. Though it wouldn't be that easy, when a Separatist fleet arrived out of hyperspace to attack the Republic capital. Obi-Wan and Anakin would be kept on the planet with Yoda to keep watch over Sidious. Meanwhile, Mace, Plo, and Saesee would take to the skies. The capital of the Republic needed to be protected. All available ships on the ground would be lifted off into the air as they went to fight the Separatist invasion. Though inside of the Senate building, where the 3 Jedi were still holding Palpatine captive at, they were faced with a shuttle, and out of that shuttle came Dooku and Grievous. Obi-Wan and Anakin moved to defend, as Yoda, who was watching over the Sith Lord, stayed behind. Obi-Wan engaged with Grievous and Anakin with Dooku. Yoda had to keep close eye on Palpatine, who was antsy as ever. The secret was out of the bag, but with the Separatist numbers, the Republic could very easily lose, not just the battle, but the war. He decided that if he wanted to keep himself in power, he would seize the advantage as he force-pulled one of his blades off of Anakin's belt and ignited his lightsaber, as he began to duel with Master Yoda. Grievous pushed Kenobi back as they cut down a massive pillar, while Anakin teetered between Form 2 and Form 5 as he pushed Dooku back. Sidious and Yoda bounced around as they clashed with one another. Anakin was able to push Dooku out into the platform as he bested the elderly duelist, cutting off both of his hands and kicking him in the face to the ground. Anakin turned around and watched as his master was pushed back by Grievous, and Yoda fought with Sidious. Anakin had to choose. He was very close with both these Jedi Masters, and he needed to help one of them. He knew his master could handle Grievous, so he resorted to helping Yoda fight Sidious as he moved in and clashed blades with the Sith Lord. Yoda and Anakin moved as if they had done this exercise before. Grandmaster and Master used each other as a tool to their fight against Sidious. As Anakin took the frontal assault, Yoda jumped up Anakin's back and over Sidious, slicing at his legs. As Obi-Wan on the other side of the massive hallway was holding his own with Grievous, who was proving to be a difficult match. Sidious grinned as he saw an opportunity to use Kenobi as a scapegoat for Anakin's focus. Sidious pushed Yoda and Anakin back as he shot lightning out as it threw Kenobi into one of the massive pillars, knocking him unconscious. Grievous kept moving towards Kenobi as Sidious grinned. Anakin turned his attention. He wouldn't let Grievous kill Kenobi while he was still down. But Grievous then turned his attention away from Kenobi. Grievous, while being one who hated Obi-Wan more than just about anybody in the galaxy, he did respect him enough as a warrior. General Grievous wouldn't kill Obi-Wan while he was down and unconscious, because that would mean he never truly bested Kenobi himself. Though Sidious would call Grievous a cowardice fool, Sidious turned and continued dueling with Anakin and Yoda, as Grievous's rage boiled from within. Anakin saw it as Grievous ran over to their duel and jumped up as Yoda and Anakin moved to block his blades. Grievous swung and clashed blades with Sidious though, knocking the unsuspecting Sith Lord off balance. Anakin and Yoda were surprised as Grievous began to duel with Sidious. Grievous had enough of these Sith. Dooku had clearly lost to Anakin and was currently not going anywhere, and Sidious had no respect for a warrior's code. Sidious locked blades with Grievous as he pushed his advantage. While Sidious was a talented duelist, Grievous was a Jedi killer for a reason. All the mechanics inside of his head made it easy for him to pick up on duelist movesets and how they would use different lightsaber combat forms to kill an enemy. This was the only reason he struggled with Kit Fisto, because Kit Fisto's Form 1 had random strikes that would offset the algorithm inside of Grievous. The two duelists locked back and forth as Sidious kept changing his styles and Grievous kept moving to work with each of these styles. Their duel was intense, and then Sidious got his first laugh as he struck at Grievous's chest and cut into his organs, leaving him defenseless as he fell to the ground. Sidious, as a Sith he was, went for the killing blow, but was sliced in the leg by Yoda as Anakin kicked Sidious in the chest. Sidious tumbled back and got back up quickly, feeling the balance off in his leg. Sidious moved quickly to combat both Jedi, but they were both, combined, way too much talented for Sidious to handle. As Anakin rolled around, Yoda pounced into the air. Sidious blocked Yoda's strike, but Anakin struck the landing as it cut through Sidious, killing the Sith Lord immediately. Anakin turned over and ran to check on his master. While the Senate guards came running out to see what had happened, the Senate guards would immediately arrest the Separatist leaders of General Grievous and Count Dooku. While the invasion of space was a complete failure, the Separatists under Admiral Trench would crumble when Mace Windu was able to kill General Trench by sneaking aboard of his vessel. The Republic would claim a short-term victory, and while this victory would bring an end to the powerhouse separatist movement, the Senate would be informed of the plot of the Sith. And they would trust the Jedi on this matter, especially because they were able to imprison the separatist leaders within one battle. While the Republic would have to work with the Separatists on a peace treaty, the Separatist Council would find a reason to find peace with the Republic, especially after 2 Jedi, Anakin and Obi-Wan, were sent there to make a deal between the Republic and the CIS. When the Clone Wars ended, the Jedi would return to peace and their peace-giving ways. With Anakin on the Council, the Jedi would reach out to slave-ridden planets. Anakin would also visit his mother late into her life until her natural death, surrounded by her son and the man who freed her, peacefully. Anakin would be saddened for her death, but there wouldn't be anyone that would have to pay for it. Obi-Wan would at some point get into a duel with Maul and be able to best the Sith Lord. But after all was said and done, Anakin would become a teacher to many. After Ahsoka's early graduation, Daisha Numa would rise to become his Padawan, and many more after her, as Anakin would have proven that years of training from Sunube and Kenobi that he could truly bring balance to the Force. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to George Story, Benjamin Wells, Jay Hoffman, WarPigman308, Icy Raptor, Gort for supporting the channel. Let's hit 2,000 likes on this so we can see what if Darth Vader reached his full potential. If you want to see a what if, let me know down below. I read all comments, but I don't do crossovers. Check out the Twitch community Discord and Patreon if you be part of our incredible community or support me in other ways. If you want to learn how to win a free lightsaber, go down below. There is a pinned comment. There's a doc on that comment. You click on the doc, you go down, and you write your name, follow all the rules. Next giveaway is in about a week and a half. It's July 4th of 2022. And let's talk about our story here. So this is obviously a very interesting story. And the reason I say that is because the title is What If Master Sinube Trained Anakin? And while that is the main focus of probably the first 30 minutes of the story, it ends up being Obi-Wan that finishes the training. Now, why did I do this? Well, it actually wasn't intended. It wasn't a part of my plan at all. Honestly, I was going to do something completely different. And while this happens a lot when I start my outlines, I think this ending is much better than the original one. And the reason I had it happen is because I feel like the old guy, the old man that was Master Sinube, would struggle a lot with dealing with the pressure of training Anakin. Training Anakin was a large pressure, and I think we don't talk about that enough. And I think Obi-Wan, and while I know I get comments all the time from people that say, well, you know, why are you so hard on Obi-Wan? Well, Obi-Wan, I'm not being hard on, I'm being honest with. Obi-Wan was a great teacher, he really was, but you're taking a Padawan that's probably in his early 20s, I think he was 22, who has never trained anybody, who is being expected to train basically the Messiah. He is this one guy that knows this thing about a religion, and he's being told that he has to train the Messiah. That is an incredibly difficult task. You haven't been trained to be a master, you've only been trained to be a knight. And I think removing Anakin 1 from the Jedi Temple would have helped incredibly. I think Anakin being away from the temple would have made him 100% a better Jedi without even having Master Sinube involved. But Master Sinube being involved, being the Jedi that he was, teaching the lessons of patience and love and learning how to move away from rage would have been such a movement forward for Anakin. Now, there's one thing I wanted to talk about here, and it's something I don't talk about in the story, and that's Obi-Wan's training to become a master. Now, while I talk a lot about Anakin's training because the video is about Anakin's training, I wanted to hint at the fact that Obi-Wan would pick up on what Master Sinube taught him on his own. You know, obviously Sinube would be teaching both Anakin and Obi-Wan, but the main thing here, and the main thing that we need to talk about, is the fact that Anakin would have respect for Obi-Wan. Why? Because of Master Sinube. Anakin didn't have a whole lot of respect for Kenobi in canon. You know, he saw himself as equal or better, and that's something that you see as a very large issue in Attack of the Clones. And one thing that I think that Sinube would conquer is Anakin's arrogance, having him focus on the Force instead of becoming that boy that was a pod racer. Anakin was a pod racer, and he won as a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and you know, you're going to be a bit arrogant after that, and you're going to have a bit of an ego. And I think Sinube would bring that ego down and be like, look, you don't have to be egotistical, you can just chill out, man. And if Anakin figured that out, if Anakin learned that, you know, he didn't need to have this incredibly oversized ego, that he would flourish. I think he would realize that he could be more without that ego, and that the Force could guide him to do more and be more of the Jedi he could become, and the Jedi that he wanted to become, rather than a Jedi that he didn't want to become. And I think Anakin's true gift here was Obi-Wan. And that was the point of the story. I think Obi-Wan was the master that Anakin could bring Anakin to the Jedi he needed to become. And there's one thing I want to talk about, and I think it's based on spoilers ahead for those of you that have not seen the end of Kenobi. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. But Anakin told Obi-Wan that he's not his failure, right? It wasn't Anakin's failure, and I think that different perception gave inspiration for the story. Now, while I started writing this after Kenobi had aired, I really thought that would be an interesting direction to take advantage of and express that Obi-Wan was really a good master. And I know I go hard on him because I do love Obi-Wan, and I'm hard on him because I do love him, but I think he was the teacher that Anakin needed. He just wasn't ready at the right time. And I think if he was given the time to be ready to teach him, to be ready to teach Anakin one-on-one, I think Anakin would have progressed immediately. Now, one thing that I do want to highlight on is the fact that Anakin not being in the temple would have really succeeded, because being trained one-on-one by a Jedi Master, being Obi-Wan, or even Sunube, would have excelled incredibly fast. Anakin was held back in all of his classes. Anakin was naturally talented with everything. You know, he was incredible with what he did, and the fact was that you know, you have this guy that is excelling in all of his classes and doesn't get the chance to actually excel. You know, he's excelled in all of his classes, he's done well in all of his classes, but he's not allowed to progress forward. It's like you've passed everything with the highest colors, straight A's all your life, and you don't get to go and skip a grade to a higher level where you belong. And Anakin being one-on-one would be able to move as fast as he was. You know, he'd be able to progress really quickly, and that's what I wanted to highlight here. Anyways, though, I hope you all enjoyed this. This was a fun video. Rest in peace, Master Sinube. That was a hard one to do. I felt bad for doing that, but I felt it would lead to an interesting turnabout, because you don't normally with these videos the Master doesn't normally die, and I wanted to throw that little twist in there for you guys. But it was completely unintended to happen in the original outline for this video. Anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.